Okay, hey everybody. We're doing another one of our interview series on former SNAPs and people who have worked up in the Sonora office for the Tuolumne River Trust. So again, I am Seth Connolly, the restoration manager up here, and we today have with us.
Hi, everyone. I'm Alisha Summers.
So Alicia, you served with us as part of the AmeriCorps program, Sierra Nevada AmeriCorps Partnership, the SNAP program. And I was wondering if you could just kind of tell us a little bit about your experience, and just like a little bit about your background before you got to us.
Okay. Well, before I got to you guys, I had just graduated with a Bachelor of Science in Global Environmental Science at the University of Hawaii at Manoa. And at the time, I just wanted to have an experience where it would allow me to work, preferably in the mainland, the continental US, for a little bit of time before I went to graduate school. I was in the process of looking at which graduate school programs I wanted to apply to, as well as have that experience to go and live in the mainland and do something with conservation, environmental conservation, since my degree was in global environmental science. So that's kind of my background. And that's how I found the AmeriCorps program. And I saw that TRT, well, there was the SNAP program, right? And then I got some interviews and I ended up with TRT.
So it was interesting. You came out for about a half-year term. So you came out for most of a field season when we were pretty busy. I was
Yeah.
wondering if well, let's just backtrack a little bit. We were pretty surprised that you wanted to come out here from Hawaii. It's such a beautiful place where you are, and then you're coming out to this burn area where it's just all like poison oak and weeds and all of that. So what kind of drew you to want to come to the mainland to see a different context of environmental conservation?
Well, I mean, I think it's really important to go and see other places in terms of and the problems that they're dealing with over there, because I didn't want to just know about management options and management approaches in one specific area that I've done my concentration of study in the past, which is, in Hawaii. And Hawaii is so different from other environments, obviously, like in the Sierras. So I really wanted to go to another place and see what kind of place-based management solutions and approaches were being done over there. To have that experience also in a very different culture than what I was particularly used to. And to be able to challenge myself to see if I could adapt to that situation and learn what kind of things you guys were doing, so that maybe there'd be something that I could bring back to my own hometown. And yeah, I did come during kind of a weird, it was like a 6-month term, whereas I think majority of your guys' snaps are 1 year. I think I came around March, right? And then I left during October. So it was a very quick 6-month time period during the summertime. And that was the summer where there were a lot of wildfires, which was actually very eye-opening towards what kind of issues you guys were going through, compared to in Hawaii, we have some wildfires, but not to the extent that California deals with. So I really enjoyed learning how you guys approach wildfires, how that history, the history in approaching wildfires in the past. I learned a lot about that, including how the Native Americans have approached those management options with wildfires back in the day. So yeah, I really enjoyed that experience and learning all those approaches that you guys take over there.
Yeah, that's right. I'd almost forgot. We'd had a couple of big fires, the Denell fire, which burned up north of Pinecrest, which was pretty bad. And then the Ferguson fire, which I think was about 110,000 acres. It was pretty substantial. It actually had a pretty big impact on just our scope of work, where we could work and how, and the air quality was obviously very poor for a while. But you did a few different things. You did a lot of field work with us, and then you did a lot of more administrative projects, a lot of outreach stuff. I was wondering if you wanted to kind of talk about maybe some of your favorite parts of the experience that you had.
Yeah, so it was an interesting situation because of all those wildfires. So I kind of got I feel like because the wildfires, I even got to do a little bit more office work than I would have thought. Like, I think I would have done more field work if it weren't for that. So then I ended up taking on a little project of my own. Well, not really of my own, but I ended up taking the project where it was like it's called, I think it's called the story mapping. I don't remember if that's the term of that, the story maps that's with the Esri program. And so I was able to kind of take upon that project and just like telling the story about TRT and also telling the story about the Tuolumne watershed. So I remember there was like one section where I made like kind of a timeline of the history of the policies and what have happened that affected the Tuolumne watershed. And then the second part, I ended up like working with some, being able to communicate with some of the river rafters and talking to them about the different place names, because those place names of the currents along the Tuolumne like have a lot of a significant meaning behind it, meaning behind like the ecology of the watershed, as well as like their experience on the watershed and the history with river raftings. That was very interesting. So I think that was kind of the highlight, actually, like being able to talk with these like long time like river rafters who were maybe like one of the first people to really experience rafting down the Tuolumne. I thought that was really cool. And then the other part was doing the field work, where I got to do that a lot with you guys. And we got to see these beautiful and sometimes not so beautiful areas. Got to do a lot of weeding, and that was a very humbling experience, as well as like it just made me appreciate so much more areas that I see where it is very preserved and protected. Like it takes a lot of effort to keep it that way, or to bring it from a state where it is very overtaken by invasive weeds, and to transform it to an area where there's a lot more biodiversity and it's a lot more of a healthy ecosystem. So that was a very humbling experience, I think, and made me learn a lot and appreciate the work that people do to keep a healthy ecosystem. Yeah.
Yeah, it was definitely an interesting time for our programs. We were really just kind of embarking on this, public-private nonprofit partnership through the Yosemite Stanislaus Solutions Stakeholder Collaborative, working very closely with the Forest Service to begin a bunch of meadow restoration projects and a bunch of other things. So we had always been active in advocacy and other things, but in terms of doing on-the-ground restoration, it was like a new level for us. So it really helped to build our capacity. We were able to do a couple of dozen meadows projects, I think, starting that year, and then the next couple of years after that. So then you finish up and you go back to Hawaii, and then I know you're in grad school now. Do you want to talk about something a little bit about what you've learned, or what you're doing now?
I am in the Department of Urban and Regional Planning at UH Manoa. And I am specializing in environmental planning, and I'm doing projects that are more specifically geared towards climate change resiliency. I guess, like, to describe it, like community resiliency against climate change impacts. So Hawaii is majority of the island's communities are in coastal regions. So I mostly do work with coastal regions, like looking at sea level rise and impacts like that, and looking at how we can adapt to the situation.
So similarly, I lived in San Diego before coming up here, and I was on the beach, and you think of climate change and you think immediately of sea level rise, right? So I thought coming up here, to Sonora and up in the Sierra, I said, oh, we're going to leave all that behind, and then you realize that it's just really just kind of a different context. That there's no matter what the ecosystem, there's always going to be there's impacts that we don't even quite really understand yet everywhere, even up here. So what would be your advice for somebody either trying to get into a young person trying to get into the conservation field, or even urban planning? Well, what would be, and you're not that old yourself, but certainly always wise beyond your years. What would be your advice to somebody kind of starting out this path?
My advice, I guess this is also something that the job at TRT taught me to be adaptable. You definitely taught me to be adaptable, and I think that's very important going into both the field of conservation and in if you go into urban planning. Like, things aren't going to work out the exact way that you want them to work out, and it's important to know how to adapt to the situation. I guess that's just like a life lesson in general, but something that TRT really taught me, that it's important to be adaptable to the situation. For conservation specifically, yeah, I would say, like, I mean, this is a practical kind of recommendation, but I mean, if you do have like an undergraduate education, I definitely recommend that they do take classes and things like GIS. Like, it's, especially GIS is a very well used popular tool to use these days amongst not only conservationists but also in urban and regional planning. And if you have a chance to be able to use those tools, like in your undergrad education or with a new job, like if you get hired by TRT, I think it's really important to make the effort to learn those tools if you can, because it's really expensive for someone just to buy it. So if you do have the opportunity to learn it, I really recommend learning it. Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. To echo some of what you said, I find that often maybe the youngest people and the newest people in any organization are sometimes the most technologically savvy, and so it's actually a really good way to get in is to know some of these programs and to be able to do that. And I also am a fan of GIS. I think a lot of people really are able to pick up information visually. I think a lot easier sometimes, especially if it's complex. You could just show them and they get it. You can look at COVID as an example, where
Yeah.
there's clusters and how it spreads, so I think there's a lot of different applications for it. I want to say thank you very much for taking the time to interview with us. You were just a joy to have around during your term, but it's but as polished as you are, I don't think what I always remember is you're kind of goofy in a very funny way, funny and endearing and always positive. We were really grateful to have you around, and I can't wait to see what you do next. I know how talented and how smart you are, so I'm
Thank
looking forward
you.
to whatever you're going to end up doing in the future. And really want to say thanks for being with us for a bit. Appreciate it.
Yeah, of course. Mahalo for letting me work with you guys. It was a cool experience. I really cherish the moments that I worked at TRT. I think it was really fun. And I must say, another key moment at TRT was being able to raft down the Tuolumne. That was so nice. Like, I know that was just a plus. That was just because you guys had connections with people, but that was like so much fun, and I really enjoyed like those experiences that you guys gave us on the side of just working. Yeah.
Awesome.